Hello everyone, my name is Graves and it's that time of year again. It's November, which means it's World Season Professional Smite. For the last 2 years I've made it sort of a tradition to make a video previewing all the teams that'll be playing for the right to lift Thor's hammer, and this year is no different. However, unlike years past, there will now be 3 parts instead of 2. With the console wars done, let's get into the second part of this 3-part series. We'll be looking at the 8 teams joining Hype Unit Xbox and Team Rival Xbox at the placement stage. But before I get into explaining any of the teams, let's go over the format for this stage of the tournament. The placement stage will feature a double elimination bracket consisting of best of 3s until the semi-finals, which will be best of 5. From there, the final 2 teams at the end will play each other in a best of 3 series for seeding, and move on to the main event at DreamHack Atlanta. Without further ado, let's start with the SML teams. Hype Unit PC. Roster: Russian Poppy, Mollusk, Sops, Benny Q, Gamma. We start with the number 2 seed from the NASML, Hype Unit, a team who during the first half of the season looked to be on an absolute warpath with no end in sight, and didn't even drop a single game until week 7, when they lost their first set. However, the wheels came off the cart in the second half of the season, and Hype Unit got very fortunate in the final week that the MSI representative of Armada got 2-0'd. If that didn't happen, this team wouldn't be here. The team's come a long way from being a roster in the Combine, but they need to regain their first half form in order to have a chance at success here. Can the boys bring the hype and uphold the reputation of the NASML? Outcold Gaming. Roster: Dimmy, Frostiak, Pretty Prime, Spudio, Breeze. Next up is the second seed from the EU-SML, Outcold Gaming. Outcold had a slow start to Phase 2, but just like they did in Phase 1, they went on a tour of destruction during the second half, which is good enough to finish second in a very competitive EU-SML. In terms of LAN experience, this team is second to none. Dimmy's a double world champion, Frostiak's been around the competitive Smite scene since 2014, Pretty Prime's a 2-time Worlds finalist, and this isn't the first LAN for Spudio, or Breeze. However, Breeze is who I want to talk about here. In the span of 9 months, Breeze, a former Heroes of the Storm player, went from the announcement of the cancellation of the HGC to going on to Smite Worlds, and looked quite good for a rookie support. Can Outcold do what Insignum did last year and become the shock of the tournament? Sanguine Esports. Roster: Haddix, Panitom, Shinto, Netrioid, Rongyu. Coach: Oxaladian. Next up is the number 1 seed in the NASML and the last hope of Latin America, Sanguine Esports. After the death of the Smite Global Series following Season 5, many thought the competitive scene outside of NA and EU was dead, and for the most part, it is. However, Sanguine have defied the odds, and the former roster of Why So Serial got picked up for the SML in Season 6. While they did well with a second place finish in Phase 1 and a good performance at MSI play-ins, Phase 2 was easily their best split, finishing atop the table in the SML. However, as been the case for international teams of old, the dreaded monster of visa issues have struck again. Just like at MSI, the team will be without Yarkor, the team's starting solo laner, and while the slot was filled last time by their coach Oxaladian, this time it'll be filled by former NASML player Haddix. Sanguine has the weight of an entire region on their shoulders. Can they get it done? Simplicity. Roster: Maniac, Fails, Death Panther, Streak Up, Genetics. Coach: Lucas. Last up for the SML teams is Simplicity, Europe's number 1 seed. A roster full of players who didn't want to make the move to NA for the Pro League, this team is certainly stacked with talent, and also have the LAN pedigree to potentially rival Outcold. Plus, unlike Outcold, this isn't this roster's first rodeo at LAN. They represented the region at MSI and made the main event, losing out in the quarterfinals to Dignitas. Add that with the fact that last placements, Death Panther and Genetics were on that magical Insignum roster that nearly made Worlds. This is a team not to be trifled with. Now let's move on to the bottom 4 SPL teams from the Season 6 regular season. Space Station Gaming. Roster: Aquarius, Sino, Andinster, Barracuda, Jeff Hinla. Coach: Alpha Jackal. Starting us off is the team who finished the worst throughout all of Season 6, Space Station Gaming. To put it bluntly, this team was a mess. SSG started the season with decently high expectations. They kept their roster who the previous year were 1 game away from the World Semi-Finals. However, the team completely fell apart between seasons. Everything they tried didn't work in Phase 1 to the point where they made roster changes and role swaps to bring back results. But the changes didn't work. The team has not won a set in the SPL since May 16th, And while they did get close in sets since then, it was not good enough. The good news is that in the most recent games the team have played, they've looked much better. What we need to find out is if the recent performance is more of what we should expect, or if it was a fluke, leading back to the SSG we've grown familiar with this season. The team has experience, and the talent to get it done. The question is, what SSG will we see? Obey Alliance. Roster. Ducky, Weaken, Moswall, Wowie, Mineral. Coach, Cassier. Next up is the SPL's 9th overall seed, Obey Alliance. Now I want to get this out of the way for people who don't keep up with the SPL. This isn't the same Obey Alliance team from the past two World Championships. In fact, this team wasn't even known as Obey Alliance until the start of Phase 2, when they picked up the former roster of Trifecta, which also wasn't the same Trifecta roster from last year. Needless to say, this iteration of Obey is still interesting. The team is a bit of a mishmash between veteran talent, some underrated talent, and up-and-coming support and coach. To me, Obey's a team who can maybe take a shot game every here and there, but I don't expect too crazy of a Worlds run from this beloved org. Luminosity Gaming. Roster. Zalia, Lasbra, Snoopy, Joshi, Eonic. Next up is the 8th seed in the SPL, Luminosity Gaming. I would talk about this team's Phase 1, but I'll just summarize it by saying it was abysmal. They didn't win a single set, and needed some changes. Thankfully for LG fans, they actually made those changes, and used them to get some surprising wins in Phase 2, including a win over top overall SPL seed team rival. But regular season success is one thing. They need results at placements if they want to sniff the world stage. But I think at this stage of competition, they can do it. The expectation is top 4 at worst. But they're certainly gunning for and could easily reach top 2. SK Gaming. Roster. Belair, Sam for Soccer 2, Paul, Zapman, Neilma. Coach, L Chuckles. Lastly, we have the 7th seed overall from the SPL, and a team who last year made the World Semi-Finals under the name of Trifecta, SK Gaming. Last year, this team got hot at the right time in placements and rode the momentum to a World Semis appearance. But the problem with SK all year was inconsistency. At times, they looked like that Trifecta team that took down United at Worlds and looked to be one of the best teams in the world. But then, they'd look uncharacteristically weak against their next opponent, the very next time they played, leading to a season that could be described as disappointing at best. If this team can find some consistency, they could be a dark horse to go deep at DreamHack Atlanta, but at the very least, they should do well at placements, most likely as one of the favorites to grab one of the 2 slots to DreamHack Atlanta. Well, that's about going to do it for this video. Thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you want to, or don't. I don't really care. Subscribe if you want to, and then you'll probably get recommended a bunch of old cringy videos from my channel. And leave a comment if there's anything you're excited about for World Season, any other things you think I missed, or if you're just excited in general. Well, anyways, thank you once again for watching, and this has been Graves, signing out.